Did you know that World War I was the first war to be extensively documented on film and photography? That's right. It was a war of firsts in more ways than one. As nations clashed, cameras clicked and film reels spun, capturing the grim reality of war like never before. This was a stark departure from previous conflicts, where the public's understanding of war was often limited to artist renditions and written accounts. Now, they could see it for themselves, in all its brutal honesty. The war was no longer an abstract concept, but a tangible reality, brought to life through pictures and moving images. This extensive documentation served a dual purpose. On one hand, it was a tool of propaganda, used to stir up nationalistic fervor and rally support for the war effort. Images of heroic soldiers and triumphant victories were broadcasted to the public, painting a picture of a just and necessary struggle. On the other hand, it also unveiled the harsh truth of war. For the first time, people could witness the devastation and human cost of conflict. They could see the muddy trenches, the ruined cities, the wounded soldiers. It was a stark reminder of the grim reality of war, a reality that couldn't be sugarcoated or romanticized. This visual documentation of World War I had a profound impact on how the war was perceived, both during that time and in future conflicts. It influenced public opinion, shaped policy decisions, and even affected how future wars were waged. Moreover, it laid the groundwork for modern war reporting. Today, we take for granted the ability to see conflicts unfold in real time from the comfort of our homes. But it was World War I that first made this possible. So, World War I was not just a war of firsts in terms of its scale and impact, but also in terms of how it was documented and remembered. It was a war that changed not just the world, but also how we see and understand war itself. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in 1914 triggered the start of World War I. A shot fired in Sarajevo, Bosnia by Gavrilo Princip, a member of a Serbian nationalist group known as the Black Hand, set off a chain of events that would change the world forever. Now, let's delve into the details. The Archduke and his wife Sophie were visiting Sarajevo when their motorcade took a wrong turn, bringing them directly into the path of the waiting assassins. The assassination was more than just a murder. It was a spark that ignited a tinderbox of tense international relations. At the time, Europe was a tangled web of alliances and treaties. Austria-Hungary, naturally, was outraged by the assassination and, backed by Germany, issued an ultimatum to Serbia. When Serbia failed to comply fully, Austria-Hungary declared war. But it wasn't as simple as one country declaring war on another. You see, Serbia was allied with Russia, who mobilized its forces in response. This mobilization led Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, to declare war on Russia. France, tied to Russia by another alliance, was then pulled into the conflict. Germany's attempt to quickly knock France out of the war by marching through neutral Belgium brought Britain into the fray due to their treaty with Belgium. It was like a giant domino effect, with one action leading to another, each escalating the conflict further. This complex system of alliances, which was initially designed to maintain a balance of power and prevent war, ironically, did the opposite. Each country felt obligated to honor their alliances, and as a result, what could have been a regional conflict quickly escalated into a full-blown global war. And just like that, a single bullet set the world on a path to war. A war that would last for 4 long years, cost millions of lives, and change the face of our world forever. This was the grim beginning of the First World War. World War I was optimistically dubbed the war to end all wars. A sentiment that swept across nations. It was born from the belief that the sheer scale of destruction, the unimaginable horror, would be so profound as to deter countries from ever going to war again. Imagine the scene. The world, still in its infancy when it came to mechanized warfare, was witnessing death and devastation on an unprecedented scale. The trenches, the gas, the artillery, all were chilling reminders of mankind's capacity for destruction. There was a universal yearning for peace, a collective sigh that hoped this war would be the last of its kind. This was the era of the lost generation, a term coined by Gertrude Stein and popularized by Ernest Hemingway. Young men, barely out of their teens, were thrust into the maelstrom of war, their innocence lost amidst the mud and the blood of the battlefields. The human cost was staggering, with an estimated 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians losing their lives. The world had never seen anything like it, and yet the irony is palpable. Just over 2 decades later, the world would once again be plunged into conflict with the outbreak of World War II. The seeds of this subsequent war were sown in the very soil that the war to end all wars had hoped to make barren of conflict. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to ensure peace, instead planted the roots of resentment and revenge. The optimistic belief that World War I would deter future wars proved to be tragically misguided. Instead, it marked the beginning of a century marked by conflict and warfare. The lessons that should have been learned were ignored, the sacrifices forgotten, and the world was once again caught in the grip of war. Despite its optimistic nickname, World War I was far from being the war to end all wars. World War I saw the introduction of tanks on the battlefield. As the war erupted across Europe, the face of warfare was about to change dramatically. The early stages of the conflict were characterized by trench warfare, where opposing forces dug into the earth, creating a static and grueling stalemate. But then a new invention rolled onto the scene: the tank. The British were the first to utilize tanks, in an attempt to break the deadlock of the Western Front. Their initial design, Little Willie, was a bit of a clumsy beast, slow and difficult to maneuver. But it was a start. The first tanks were heavily armored, capable of crossing trenches, and equipped with machine guns or cannons. They were designed to terrify as much as to fight, their imposing presence intended to break the enemy's morale. The first major use of tanks was at the Battle of the Somme in September 1916, where they were deployed to cut through barbed wire and clear a path for infantry. Unfortunately, these early tanks were unreliable and prone to mechanical failures. Many broke down before reaching their objectives. Despite these initial setbacks, the potential of the tank was recognized. Over time, designs improved, speed increased, firepower was enhanced, and reliability became less of an issue. The French and Germans also started developing their own tanks, each with their unique designs and tactics. By the end of the war, tanks had become an integral part of the battlefield. They had shifted the dynamics of warfare from static trench warfare to a more mobile and dynamic form of combat. The tank had proved its worth, and there was no turning back. The introduction of tanks in World War I set the stage for their widespread use in World War II and subsequent conflicts. These metal beasts, once a strange and experimental weapon, evolved into a cornerstone of modern warfare. Tanks, a now common sight on the battlefield, made their debut during the bloody conflict of World War I, and with that, the nature of warfare was changed forever. Animals played a crucial role in World War I. The war was not just a human affair, but a test of survival and courage for many creatures. Among them, horses were perhaps the most widely used, carrying soldiers into battle, transporting supplies, and pulling heavy artillery. They were the backbone of the war effort, with millions serving on all sides. Pigeons, too, had a significant role. These birds became the lifelines for communication in the trenches, carrying vital messages across enemy lines when no other means of communication was possible. They saved countless lives through their bravery and speed. And let's not forget about the dogs. They served as messengers, carried medical supplies, and even helped locate wounded soldiers on the battlefield. Dogs like Stubby, a stray who became a decorated war hero, exemplified the remarkable contributions animals made during this tumultuous time. In the midst of human conflict, animals served as unsung heroes. In 1914, an unofficial Christmas truce occurred along the Western Front. This was a moment of humanity that shone brightly against the backdrop of one of the bloodiest wars in history. The soldiers on both sides, far from home and trapped in the muddy trenches, found a common spirit in the season of goodwill. As the story goes, on Christmas Eve, the sound of gunfire and artillery was replaced by carols drifting across the no-man's land. British and German soldiers alike, huddled in their trenches, heard the familiar tunes sung in unfamiliar accents. The melancholic melody of Silent Night echoed between the lines, a poignant reminder of peace in a time of war. In the spirit of Christmas, soldiers from both sides stepped out of their trenches and met in no man's land. They exchanged gifts, shared food, and even organized impromptu football matches. These were the same men who, just a day before, were trying to kill each other. But now they were sharing laughter, stories, and a moment of respite from the relentless horror of war. This event, known as the Christmas Truce, was not a planned or official ceasefire. It was an organic demonstration of humanity's capacity for empathy and compassion, even in the harshest of circumstances. It's a testament to the innate desire for peace and camaraderie that exists within us all. The truce was short-lived. After Christmas, the war resumed with its full brutality. Yet the memory of that Christmas truce lingered. It became a symbol of hope, a beacon of human spirit in a time of darkness. The Christmas truce of 1914 is not just a story of a brief ceasefire. It's a story about the strength of the human spirit, about how, even in the midst of the most brutal war, people can find a way to connect, to share, and to remind each other of their shared humanity. The Christmas truce of 1914 serves as a poignant reminder of humanity amidst the horrors of war. World War I marked the end of several major empires. A cataclysmic event, this war proved to be the final act in the drama of some of history's most influential empires. 4 of these were the German, Russian, Ottoman, and Austro-Hungarian empires, each falling like dominoes in the aftermath of the war. Firstly, let's consider the German Empire. Under Kaiser Wilhelm II, Germany had been a formidable force. However, the war's staggering toll, both in lives and resources, led to widespread unrest. The Kaiser was forced to abdicate in 1918, marking the end of the German monarchy and the beginning of the Weimar Republic. Now let's turn to the Russian Empire. The war exposed the weaknesses of Tsar Nicholas II's rule, leading to the Russian Revolution in 1917. The revolution resulted in the establishment of a communist government and the end of the Romanov dynasty, one of the oldest in Europe. The Ottoman Empire was another casualty. Once an expansive and powerful entity spanning 3 continents, it crumbled under the strain of the war. The empire was partitioned, with its territories forming the modern nations of Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and others. Lastly, we have the Austro-Hungarian Empire. A multi-ethnic empire with a complex political structure, it was already on shaky ground when the war began. The war's end saw it disintegrated into several independent nations, including Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and parts of Yugoslavia. The collapse of these empires had profound implications on the post-war world order. New nations emerged from the ashes, redrawing the map of the world. The power vacuum left by these fallen empires set the stage for the rise of new superpowers and the geopolitical struggles of the 20th century. World War I, a conflict that reshaped the world, marked the end of an era for these once powerful empires. The war's legacy is a poignant reminder of the transient nature of power and the profound impact of global conflict. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended World War I. This peace agreement was more than just a formal end to hostilities. It was a pivotal document that would shape the course of the 20th century. Held in the ornate Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles, the treaty negotiations were dominated by the victors, namely France, Britain, and the United States. Germany, the defeated power, was not even invited to the negotiations, a fact that would breed resentment for years to come. The terms of the treaty were harsh for Germany. The nation was forced to accept full responsibility for the war, a clause known as the War Guilt Clause. This was a bitter pill to swallow for a country that had fought so hard and lost so much. Along with this, Germany was required to make hefty reparations payments to the Allied nations, a financial burden that would cripple its economy for years. Additionally, Germany was stripped of its overseas colonies and had significant portions of its territory handed over to neighboring countries. Its military was also drastically reduced, leaving the nation feeling vulnerable and humiliated. But the Treaty of Versailles did more than just punish Germany. It sowed the seeds for future conflicts. The harsh terms and the sense of humiliation felt by the German people would fuel resentment and anger, sentiments that would be exploited by a certain Austrian corporal named Adolf Hitler. The treaty also failed to address the underlying issues that had led to the war in the first place: nationalism, imperialism, and the tangled web of alliances that had sparked the conflict were all left unresolved. So, while the Treaty of Versailles brought an end to the Great War, it also set the stage for the next great conflict. It's a stark reminder that peace is not just about ending wars, but about addressing the root causes that lead to them in the first place.